In today's video, we have some pretty significant NHL injury updates, some interesting prospects have signed some new contracts with their NHL clubs, and we have a hiring in Buffalo as well. We'll jump into the latest coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, before we jump into today's news, I just want to quickly acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped was kind enough to send me a package, which turned out to be a really good box of great products. I highly recommend them. Great service, easy to deal with. They can give you an exclusive offer of 20% off and free shipping on all orders using promo code TSH at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Now, jumping into today's news, we have a variety of things to talk about. Let's start with the hiring in Buffalo. It looks as though the Buffalo Sabres are finalizing hiring an associate general manager to work with Kevin Adams, and that's longtime NHL executive Jason Karmanos, who was recently, not that long ago, let go from the Pittsburgh Penguins. He worked a long time with Jim Rutherford between his time in Pittsburgh and before that in the Hurricanes organization. So he worked with Rutherford directly for a really long time, and he's a well-respected hockey guy, obviously the son of former owner of the Hurricanes as well. Now, of course, with this, obviously the Sabres could finally use a little bit more help on their staff, which is great to see. Hopefully getting through the trade deadline and everything kind of help them kind of see here how much help he really needs. I mean, Kevin Adams certainly had his work cut out for him at the deadline, get some underwhelming returns, but like I said in other videos analyzing the trades, I think for the most part his hands were kind of tied. He just really couldn't get much better than what he did, unfortunately. It's just an overall situation that's been created the way it is, and the Sabres have a lot of work to do this offseason to try to gain a form of respectability here again and come back and hopefully not be a basement dweller for too long, but they do have a lot of work to do, so he could use some help. And hopefully Karmanos will help here with some of the heavy lifting. Now, jumping into some of the prospect signings, the Rangers have signed Zack, a left shot defenseman coming out of college hockey, playing for UMass the last couple of seasons. Some were a little surprised that Jones decided to come out and sign with the pro club. I know even his head coach at UMass thought he was going to stay for another year, thought he could really benefit from that, from staying in college hockey to be more ready for the pros. But, he's an offensive defenseman, anxious to get started with professional hockey. He's 20 years old. He was originally a third-round pick a couple years ago in 2019 NHL draft, and certainly has a lot of potential. But the other thing factoring in here as well is with the Rangers blue line the way it is and all the kind of the prospects ahead of him, I'm a little surprised he didn't really consider playing another year of college hockey too. But it is what it is. He'll get started with his pro contract, and he'll have to spend some time here in the minors before he'll have a shot at cracking that Rangers lineup. But certainly another interesting blue line option for the Rangers here as they continue to get these prospects into pro situations. Now, the Ottawa Senators have signed a goalie prospect that they've had in their system for the past couple of years, and that's Danish goalie Mads Sogard, who was a draft pick in 2019 draft as well. He's been playing over in Denmark recently. He played a couple of years of junior hockey here in Canada in the Western Hockey League for the Medicine Hat Tigers, where he had some excellent statistics. Sogard was a great junior goaltender, represented his country of Denmark at the World Juniors. Unfortunately, one of those tournaments was they were relegated down a level, but still, Sogard, even though his stats at the World Juniors you can't really put too much stock into because the Danish team in front of him just wasn't overly good. They're still working on building up the amount of NHL talent they have. They've had a few good players here, but they're still a long ways away from competing with the much stronger nations that have been putting out hockey programs way longer here. But Sogard is another goalie prospect to jump into the mix here with the Senators. We've seen them use 5 goaltenders this year. Out of the 5, you could say 2 of which are certainly not prospects. To a degree, Marcus Högberg is and he isn't. I think he's played enough that he's not really a prospect anymore, but he's still on the younger side of things in his mid-20s. But besides like Matt Murray, who was assigned to a long-term deal, they picked up Anton Forsberg on waivers. He's not going to be with the Sens for too long. And then they've got, obviously, like I said, Högberg. But then we saw Joey Decord this year, and we saw Philip Gustafsson this year. Brief amount of games, but still they both looked really good. So they had some real good talent there. But many think that Sogard might actually be the best of the bunch here. He's a 6'8", 200-pound goaltender, really tall, really lanky, covers the net well, and he's just a tremendous young, interesting prospect here. I don't think he's really all that close to being NHL ready, but he'd be another interesting guy who could of course, play in the minors. It'd be interesting to see what the Sens do going into next year. They also have Kevin Mandolese, who gets signed and come up from junior this year. Another decent goalie prospect, too. He's playing in Belleville right now. Of course, DeCord ended up hurt out for the year, so Gustafsson went up and down a bit, so he can be down in Belleville right now. But they've got a lot there, but Sogard might be the best of the bunch. It's really hard to say. So certainly another reason for Sens fans to get excited about the future, although I do think it's going to be at least a couple years, likely at least, before he gets any kind of regular opportunity. Philadelphia Flyers have signed an undrafted college free agent, and it's 23-year-old center Jackson Cates, who comes from the University of Minnesota Duluth. Looking through his stats, he's not a player I was overly familiar with, but it looks as though he's gotten to everything a little bit later. Like, he didn't even go to college hockey until he was 20, played in the USHL, a little longer through his eligibility there, and now he gets signed after being undrafted as a 23-year-old. So difficult to say how this turns out for Cates. I mean, he's on a one-year ELC because of his age, so he'll have a chance to play pro hockey next year with the Flyers AHL affiliate, most likely, and we'll see where things go. But another undrafted free agent from the college ranks getting a shot at an NHL contract. One other signing to report on here as well. It's not a prospect, but a current NHL player getting extended, and that's Dallas Stars defenseman Joel Hanley, who gets extended for 2 more years at $750K. He's currently making $700K now, so it's a bit of a bump up in pay for him. Of course, Hanley previously played for the Habs and the Coyotes. He's gotten into more action this year. Of course, the Dallas Stars have had their fair share of issues this year when it comes to COVID stuff and injuries, so he's gotten more of a chance to play, and certainly had trying to make the best of it here, and he's obviously impressed them enough to get extended. So Hanley, another fairly inexpensive, cheap option, play third pair of minutes and step in for the Dallas Stars here. So certainly, a decent little signing there for Dallas. Now, jumping into some of the other news regarding some injuries, we might as well start with Dallas since we're just talking about Hanley, because they've made an announcement here today from general manager Jim Nill talking about 2 of their veteran guys that are done for the season. This is certainly going to impact things, I feel, when it comes to their push here to try to make a playoff run. But goaltender Ben Bishop, who's been out all year, is not going to be able to come back. It was rumored he was getting close, but I'm assuming he might have suffered some kind of a setback. All they really said was that he was going to be shut down for the rest of the year to make sure that he didn't run into anything further and that he would be available for next year and be good and healthy. So I'm assuming things weren't going completely as planned, or maybe he had a setback. I don't know what exactly, but either way, Bishop's done. But they do have Hudobin, and they've had Jake Ottinger all year. So the fact they haven't had Bishop all season, it's not really going to impact things too much that way. But they are going to be without Alexander Radulov for the rest of the year as well, who has an injury to a core muscle, and he does need surgery to repair it, so that will keep him out the rest of the year, and he'll be back, hopefully good as new, for next season. Now, both these guys, and Bishop and Radulov, still have some term on their deal. Radulov has 1 more year, whereas Bishop has 2 more years. I would think because of all the injuries and everything that Bishop likely does get exposed in the expansion draft. I would imagine that Seattle likely doesn't take him, given the fact that he didn't really play this year, and he's had his fair share of injuries in the past too. Not so young anymore, and has 2 more years on his contract, so probably a low risk to lose him that way, but certainly something that they can expose, probably without stressing over it a whole heck of a lot in that regard. Now, we also got confirmation that the Buffalo Sabres captain Jack Eichel is definitely done for the season. I think most of us kind of suspected that based on previous reports. The last time we heard much about Eichel was that he was out indefinitely, and they did confirm as well, which was also suspected, that he's dealing with a herniated disc in his neck, and he is going to be having surgery to correct the problem, which should be coming up here very shortly. And then indeed after that, he should be good as new and hopefully ready to go for next season. But Eichel is definitely done for this year and won't be back. Now, the Sabres also lost goaltender Linus Ullmark to injury as well. Carter Hutton's already out. I don't think they're too worried about winning a lot of games right now, because obviously they know their playoff hopes are long gone. That's certainly not an issue. And at this point, I wonder if the Sabres maybe wouldn't mind getting the first overall pick. It's never really a bad thing to help with your progress here and getting better. So, being at the bottom of the standings would certainly help their case. But in the case of Buffalo, it's hard to say. It looks like Dustin Tokarski's been called up on an emergency basis. He very well could end up playing the next little bit here. Hard to say what they do, because, like I said, Hutton's already out and Ullmark is now out too. They didn't really provide any kind of an update. We don't know what the status is on Ullmark just yet. But Ullmark's an interesting case where they didn't trade him. He's not signed. They agreed to continue discussing things throughout the rest of the season here. So Sabres are certainly at risk to lose him. I mean, until he gets pen to paper, no guarantee he's there. And if they lose Allmark as well, then it's just going to be that much further of a rebuild. I mean, they do have a good young goalie prospect in Ukko-Pekka Laukkonen, but you know what? He's probably about 2 years away, at least, I think, from playing a regular NHL games. They don't want to rush him. His stats in the AHL haven't been the greatest, but you can't always go by that. But listening to most who know goalies a little bit better than I do, feel he's still a ways away from being ready. So we'll see what happens there. Also on the injury updates, apparently Henrik Lundqvist thought he was going to possibly be able to come back for the end of the regular season in the playoffs to participate with the Washington Capitals after signing there in the offseason. Of course, we know he ended up with a heart condition that he's actually had for a long time, but it got to the point that he had to deal with it through surgery, so it was a really big deal. We've seen videos of him online working out and getting close, and of course he did a big update here in an interview with Kevin Weeks on the NHL Network recently as well. And essentially Lundqvist announced that he was going to be unfortunately not able to come back. So it was getting close before the trade deadline. There was some talk that just maybe he could actually make it back, but he ended up with some inflammation around his heart, had some setbacks, and had to kind of cool down his training a bit. But certainly he hopes to be back and able to play next year. But the Capitals almost got themselves a nice addition there late in the season, nice little surprise, but unfortunately it didn't quite work out. So that's your latest updates here for the injuries and the signings. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, what your thoughts are on how these teams are going to be impacted, and let me know if you're excited for some of these prospects as well. We'll discuss further in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll be back with more updates here as the news breaks. We'll keep you up to date on all 31 teams, soon to be 32 from around the NHL. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.